Shabbat Shalom, family. Welcome to another episode of the Halelu'Yah podcast, where we bring you the truth straight from the source. I'm Baruch Ahaya.
And I'm Jaels.
So we just want to take this time to thank y'all for sticking with us for so long. We've been learning a whole lot. And even in our own personal studies, we've been really edified. And the Most High has been really good to us because he's been showing us things that we've never seen before in stories that we've been reading basically our whole lives. And we really pray that Yah does the same for you and that he opens you up to wanting to go and research more about some of the things that you hear that we say, whether it's, you find it hard to believe or whether, you resonate with it. But, ultimately, the main goal is to seeking for yourself, working out your own salvation with fear and trembling.
Halelu'Yah. And there's actually a lot of stuff that I've been reading over again what we gone through, and there's so much more that we could talk about. It's crazy how one chapter really we don't do it justice by just talking on it for just 30 minutes, and there's so much more that we could talk about. As a matter of fact, the reason why I say this because I feel that we glossed over something, and I think it's very important because once this came to mind, it kind of blew my mind, and it made me realize how us as humans, we just see things as face value and we really don't go in depth of certain things. Like, for instance, something I was talking to you about this weekend on what's mentioned in Genesis 1:9, and it says that, yes, we're going back to Genesis 1. I want to bring this up. And it says, and Yahuwah said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. And it says there that the water was all in one place, and then the land came out of that one place. So this proves biblically the idea of what science calls Pangea. So, and this to me spoke to me because all my life as a truth seeker, I've always thought, man, while all this is happening biblically in the Middle East, what was happening on the whole other side of the earth? Why is it that Yahuwah only looked or dealt with people on that side of the world? And that's not true. It's not true because there wasn't no other side of the world. Everything was all on one side. Up until, like, for instance, during the time of Noah, the lands were all together. Okay? There was no North America, South America, Africa, and Asia, Australia, like how we know it today. Everything was one landmass. And then it says on Genesis 10:25, it says, and unto Eber were born two sons. The name of one was Peleg, for in his days was the earth divided. And I don't know how we just glossed over that. So here it shows that in the times of Peleg, in Genesis chapter 10, that landmass that was once together was then divided, because here where it says earth, the word is being used is eretz. So it's the land. And it was divided. So that means even during the time of Noah up until the time of Peleg, so that's when the earth was divided. So and I think it is interesting to talk about this because we are getting into the stories of Abraham. So now in the timeline of Abraham, yes, the earth is divided, and yes, the earth is now how we see it in the maps. And to me, this is interesting because when the earth was or when the lands were distributed between the sons of Noah, Ham, Shem, and Japheth, it wasn't just the part where we think, where they feed us this modern day looking maps, and they tell us they were separated just Africa and Europe and Asia and all that. So that would make me think, yeah, but what about North America, South America? No, that distribution of land was happening when the land masses were put together. So it makes more sense how humans actually populated the world from these from the children of Noah, because the land was all together.
So actually, just for furthermore proof on the division of the earth at the times of Peleg, there's actually scientific theory that proves that the earth was at one point, as Akjael said, called a Pangea. And that means that it was all one landmass. And I remember learning about this in school. It was called the continental drift. And now more recently, scientific term is called plate tectonics. But yeah, no, I mean, definitely do some research on that, and you'll see that these stories that we read in the Word, they're not just metaphorically. I mean, some of them are, but a lot of these are actual historical facts of things that happen. And of course, science wanted to steal the whole idea of what the Most High did by calling things like fissures and splits in the ground and things like that. Saying that the ocean was strong in certain areas and pushed the islands away. But when you really look at what they're trying to claim, even when you look at the Big Bang Theory, right? They say it's a big flash of light based on one split of an atom. But at the end of the day, Yah said, let there be light. So that Big Bang that they're considering just a scientific phenomenon was Yah saying, let there be light. This split that they're calling plate tectonics was Yah split the earth so that we can have the continents that we have today. So it's definitely interesting when you look at the scientific sort of way that they explain things. They're literally saying what Yah did in scientific terms. They're saying what he did, and they're describing the reaction of what we would see physically manifested, but they're describing the reaction of what he did in the spiritual realm. Halelu'Yah.
Halelu'Yah. Yeah. So basically, they're just adding details to what Yah already said happened. Halelu'Yah.
Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
awesome. All right.
Halelu'Yah.
So are we gonna get into Genesis 13?
Yes, we are.
All
Yes,
right.
we are.
Let's go ahead and get into it.
Okay. Genesis 13. And Abram went up out of Egypt, he and his wife, and all that he had, and Lot with him, into the south. And Abram was very rich in cattle, in silver, and in gold. And he went on his journeys from the south, even to Bethel, unto the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Hai, unto the place of the altar, which he had made there at first. And there Abram called on the name of the Lord. And Lot also, which went with Abram, had flocks and herds and tents. And the land was not able to bear them, that they might dwell together, for their substance was great, so that they could not dwell together. And there was a strife between the herdmen of Abram's cattle and the herdmen of Lot's cattle. And the Canaanite and the Perizzite dwelled in their land. And Abram said unto Lot, let there be no strife, I pray thee, between me and thee, and between my herdmen and thy herdmen, for we be brethren. Is not the whole land before thee? Separate thyself, I pray thee, from thee. If thou wilt take the left hand, then I will go to the right. Or if thou wilt depart to the right hand, then I will go to the left. And Lot lifted up his eyes and beheld a plain of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere, before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even as the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, as thou comest unto Zoar. Then Lot chose him all the plain of Jordan, and Lot journeyed east, and they separated themselves the one from the other. And Abram dwelled in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelled in the cities of the plain, and pitched his tent toward Sodom. But the men of Sodom were wicked and sinners before the Lord exceedingly. And the Lord said unto Abram, after that Lot was separated from him, lift up now thine eyes, and look from the place where thou art, northward and southward, and eastward and westward. For all the land which thou seest, to thee I will give it, and to thy seed forever. And I will make thy seed as the dust of the earth, so that if a man can number the dust of the earth, then shall thy seed also be numbered. Arise, walk through the land in the length of it and in breadth of it, for I will give it unto thee. Then Abram removed his tent, and came and dwelt in the plain of Mamre, which is in Hebron, and built there an altar unto the Lord. Halelu'Yah.
Halelu'Yah. All right. Short but full of information. Halelu'Yah.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh yeah.
the first thing that I have here on my notes is that I wanted to go over the name Abram. And Abram, you have two words that are put together. You have Ab, like from Abba, which means father, and then you have Ram, which means exalted or lifted. So putting those names together, it means exalted father. Halelu'Yah. And then
Halelu'Yah.
and then when you separate these words by their actual lettering in Paleo, you have Aleph, which is a pictograph of an ox head, which means strength, leader, first, power. Then you have Bet, right, which is a pictograph of a tent or a house. It means house, family, dwelling. You have Resh, which is a pictograph of a head, meaning chief, the first, the beginning. And then you have Mem, which is a pictograph of water, which can mean water, chaos, but it also can mean nations or an abundance. So when we put this together, Abram, Aleph, Bet, Resh, Mem, it comes to mean in its pictographic form, the strong leader of the house, the head over many. That's a very powerful name. I mean, Abram, not only did it mean exalted father, but it meant the leader of many people.
Halelu'Yah.
Halelu'Yah. It's one thing I wanted to dive into.
So what I kind of got from that story, and this is definitely, it's something worth looking at. So when you look at what happened between Abram and Lot and how the land was pretty much too small for both of their great nations, and you look at the response that Abram had, right? We all can take a page from his book, really, because the typical story that you see throughout history, if someone is being overpowered in a land that may not be their own, is the leader of that land. Let's look at Egypt. The leader of that land either takes the people as slaves, or they start a war, or there's a big fight that breaks out. It says that the herdsmen were complaining on both sides. And what that tells me, I mean, Abram being the leader of his group, Lot being the leader of his group, obviously these herdmen were whispering in their ears, like, hey, you know, this ain't gonna work for us, man. We got to do something about this. I'm willing to bet that a lot of these herdmen were willing to be violent about it, you know, and they wanted that land. They wanted enough for their own family. But Abram's response, being that he was Lot's Ak, his brother, his protector, right, was that, well, how about we separate from each other? And furthermore, I'm going to give you the choice. You get to pick where you want to reside, and I'll go the other way. So that just goes to show the humility, because he wasn't only just Lot's Ak, but he was technically a father to Lot. That was his brother's son. And he was there as his father figure pretty much throughout his whole life. And when they came to that point, instead of Abram being, braggadocious about it and saying, oh, well, you know, this is my land, even hearing Yah say, I'm going to give you this land, Abram didn't take it upon himself to say, I'm the one with the power. No, he allowed Lot to go ahead and choose where he wanted. And he what was the word I'm looking for? He basically, he agreed with it. You know,
and he gave him the option. He actually gave him the option, because he said, if you pick the right, I'll get the left. And if you pick the left, I'll get the right. So he was very, very humble about it, you know? And also, I want to make an emphasis on, he said that let's not fight. Let's not fight, right. You know, let's do this very, what's the word? Very brotherly. Let's do this in a way that there is no strife, there's no bad blood between us, you know. Let's separate, but not because we hate each other, you know, we're still brothers, but, you know, you choose your land and I'll choose whatever it is that you don't want. Don't worry about it.
Compromise was the word I'm looking for. I'm sitting
Yes,
there thinking, about it because I know, married couples, we always talk about this thing all the time, and it's compromise,
he
right? Like,
compromised. Yes,
and even within our own households, we don't have to be at war with our spouses. There's always that room for compromise. Now, what Abram did with Lot, that is one of the biggest showings of, as Akjael said, humility, that we see throughout the whole word. And, it's easy to read it and kind of gloss over that point, or even, to acknowledge it, but not really apply it to ourselves. But this is something that y'all put in this word so that we can see, well, this is how we ought to be. Even when we're in a position of authority, we have the choices to call the shots. But at the end of the day, what keeps the peace? As long as we're not going against Yah's word, are we able to compromise and remove our pride from whatever it is that we deem as the proper thing, and allow everyone else in that scenario to basically, I guess, just be comfortable, to live peaceably, for lack of better words. So I
Hallelujah.
just thought that was something good to point out. Hallelujah.
And you know what's interesting to me, that out of this whole thing, for Abram to continue his walk with Yahuwah, Lot had to be removed, and not in a in a bad sense, not in a sense for them to fight with each other, but in order for him to grow. You see that after Lot made a choice, and also Lot made a choice according to what he saw. He made a choice and just went upon what he saw fit. And it says that he chose the Jordan, right, towards the Jordan, and somewhere close to Sodom. And we all know that Sodom has that connotation of not righteous or not well. I think oh man, I thought I had wrote here on my notes. Sorry, I did. So Sodom means burnt, actually. So so basically like destruction in a sense. And it speaks prophetically, where it looked good because it says that he saw, and whatever he saw that it was well, that's what he chose. But prophetically, what we think looks well is not necessarily good for us, and he chose to reside next to Sodom. And it says that afterwards that Yahuwah told Abraham to look. It was Abraham himself that looked, but it was a sight that was directed by Yahuwah himself. He told him to look and then to go ahead and grab the land that he wants. So Abraham, throughout this whole choosing of what he was gonna do, it was never a choosing on his own. He allowed the other person to choose, and then when it came to his opportunity to choose, it was all directed by Yahuwah himself. So he didn't go by his own accord in any way. He allowed the other person to make a choice, and then afterwards he allowed Yahuwah to choose for him as well, or to direct his vision, which is very interesting. You see here that Abraham is a person whose heart is really set for Yahuwah. And what I also wanted to add here, because at the beginning it says that Abraham, he pitched his tent, it says in verse 3 and 4, between Bethel and Hai. And Bethel in Hebrew means the house of El, the house of Elohim. And the word Hai means heap of ruins. So prophetically, he pitched his tent between the house, or the presence of Elohim, and between ruins. And he was in between that. And a lot of us, not a lot of us, we all do. We all live in a state where we're between the presence of Elohim and ruins. But something interesting here is that where he was at, he built an altar to Elohim and he called out to him. So although he was in between, he leans more towards the presence of Yahuwah. That was interesting to me as well. So always, no matter where he's at, he's always looking or seeking the presence of Yahuwah, and always searching for whatever it is that Yahuwah wants for him.
Halelu'Yah. Just to bring it back to when you were talking about Sodom, you said that it meant what again?
Burnt.
Burnt. Okay, because I know that, actually I don't know this, but it sounds to me as though the root word for that Sodom takes place in is that root word for sodomy. And we know sodomy is something that the Most High speaks against as well. And that in and of itself is a prophetic name when you look at who the Sodomites were, and then you look at the actual land of Sodom and what they were doing.
Well, the definition of sodomy comes from that. So
Right.
the term sodomy got its meaning from how the people from Sodom were, because of their sexual immorality. Because
Right.
that story is where that word sodomy comes from. So yes, but in its Hebrew context, before all that, it means burnt. So basically burnt down, or in that sense. Yep.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it is. And I have some other stuff here in my notes. It says that Abraham, if you notice in this paragraph alone, or in this chapter alone, he doesn't really have a set place, a set dwelling. There's many places where you see that he pitched his tent. He's always willing to move. He has this like nomadic, sense to him. And the thing is, he's not attached to a dwelling. He's not attached to a land. But wherever it is that Yahuwah does take him, it says these two things. It says that he pitched his tent and he built an altar. So no matter where he was at, no matter where he found himself, he made sure that the presence of Yahuwah was known and was there.
Halelu'Yah.
Halelu'Yah.
Oh.
Anything else you wanted to add to?
No, that was pretty much. I mean, what I got from it was what I had said. That stood out the most to me, because I know that we definitely have an issue in modern times with people really wanting their own and owning up their own. And even what you just said about Abram not being attached, that can tie in with that. A lot of the things that we attach ourselves to today, we're prideful and we fight for it. But being willing to be able to let that stuff go, that's how you really come closer to Yah. And that's what he wants us to be able to do. I mean, he gives us a whole world in front of us, right? Where these fallen angels have taught us all the different things that we can do to make a name for ourselves. And because of that, we attach ourselves to those things. But are you willing to give up your dreams and your goals, knowing that once you do that, you will be closer with Yah? Even your own life. I mean, I think about it all the time. What happens when somebody comes up to you with a gun to your head, saying, denounce the name of Yahuwah or die? What is your spirit gonna be like at that very moment? That test. That's what we're looking at. That's what the ultimate test is. And the end of it all, I mean, we talk about tests and being tested daily, but truthfully, there's a final test that we have to take where our lives are literally going to be on the line. And if we're attached to our lives, our own lives, more than we're attached to Yah, we'll fail it every time. So it is urgent. Halelu'Yah.
And this, now that I think about it, a lot of us, we attach ourselves to where we live, or the idea of how our life should be, or where we should find ourselves, what position we should find ourselves. But in reality, it shouldn't matter. We should be able to move whenever Yahuwah tells us to. We should be able to live in a house or live in an apartment, or even if the time comes, if it does come, live in our car or under a bridge, wherever it is. I mean, I don't pray this on anybody, but the most important thing is that his presence is with you. That's what matters the most. And you know what? We are under the renewed covenant, where we actually have a more closer relationship with Yahuwah than what Abraham did, because Abraham, in order to feel that presence, he had to build an altar. In this renewed covenant, we are the altar, we are the temple. So the Holy Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, actually dwells in us. So no matter where we find ourselves, we should be able to feel his presence no matter what. Nothing should make us feel, nothing should have us wavering in our faith at all. Even if we are, held captives, wherever it is that we find ourselves, it doesn't matter where we're dwelling. What matters is who's dwelling in us. That's what matters the most, is the presence with you. It's the presence with me, no matter where I go. Because no matter where you go, if the presence is with you, you have everything that you can ever have in the world. Because there's nothing more precious or nothing more valuable than that actual presence.
Halelu'Yah. And to add to that point, when you were mentioning, either living in a house, an apartment, or out your car, what's the truth? Right? In the end, we're going to have to flee to the wilderness. And a lot of us in this modern era cannot fathom the fact of living out of a hut or a tent in the wilderness for the long run. Like, yeah, go camping. Some of us can barely do that. The bugs that are out there, having to really live in survival mode. And if we're attached to the modern era of, we got to have Wi-Fi, we got to have a cell phone, we got to have TV, we got to have microwaves and refrigerators and some of the luxuries that we get that aren't really necessities, but have somehow become necessities in the modern era, then we will never be able to gather up that spirit to flee to the wilderness when Yahusha comes back and he gathers us together and he's trying to get us to go to the wilderness. We're going to have to be facing that test in the end. So it's important to learn that. Yeah.
So true, because what we believe in, right? We know that these promises are going to come to happen, right? Do we actually believe this, or is it that we believe it metaphorically? Because if we truly do believe this, we need to be ready to actually live in the wilderness. We actually need to be prepared. Are you actually prepared? Like, it can happen right now, at the moment, right now. Are we actually prepared for that? Are we prepared to be, no matter where it is that we find ourselves, are we prepared to be there and just seek his presence where it is that we're at? As a matter of fact, for Sukkot, I am gonna build a tent in the backyard, so I'm gonna be practicing that. I'm gonna be practicing that. So for the 8 days of Sukkot, I'm gonna be outside. I don't know if my Isha is gonna follow me up there, but I told her that's how I'm gonna celebrate Sukkot. I'm gonna be outside. So, and it's interesting because these feasts, now that I think about it, these feasts prepares us. They prepare us in a way to get ready for these days. We just had the Feast of Trumpets. It does say that we don't know the day or the hour, but if we blow these trumpets every year, we're basically announcing his coming. So we are preparing ourselves mentally. He could come today. Each time that we celebrate Yom Teruah, he could come right now. He could be on his way. So are we preparing ourselves for that? Yom Kippur, where we fast and we cleanse ourselves, we are preparing for the wedding days with the Lamb. It's not something that is just gonna, take us by surprise. It's something that we are actively preparing for, even though these are like practice runs, but these practice runs are definitely getting us prepared. So when it does happen, at least we practice for it. You know,
Right.
it's gonna catch us while we are preparing for it. So if we're taken into the wilderness during the feast days, maybe it might happen. Hey, at least I will be in my tent.
Hey, you gonna have that grill up too? You gonna have the grill running for all 8 days too? I'm gonna come out there to you.
You're gonna fly out here.
Right. Give me some grilled whatever and chill in the tent.
You know what? I actually have a lake in the backyard, so hey, I'm ready. I'll fish anything out
Oh
here.
snap. Oh, we're ready then.
Yeah. But yeah,
Yeah.
it is interesting how this speaks like that. How Abraham, you see that he is an exalted father, a leader type person, but he is humble enough to let someone else make a choice when it comes to grabbing a piece of land, and then after that he doesn't make a choice on his own, but allows himself to be directed by Yahuwah, and
Mm.
he is willing to move at any time, and wherever it is that he finds himself, he's gonna pitch his tent and build an altar and seek his presence. Hallelujah.
Yeah. And I'm surprised I didn't even touch on this part, but it shows his love for Lot too. I mean, when you really think about what love is, he didn't just call the shot, say, "Oh yeah, I'm the man, and at least I'm letting you live here." No, he shows his love for Lot. He's like, "Lot, why don't you tell me where you want to live? And you go ahead and make that move. I'll go to the other side." And it says, Ak just said, I mean, Yah was the one that guided his steps after that. Yah seeing that he showed humility, he showed love, he showed compassion. He didn't want to just break out in a war for the sake of his own tribe, but he was willing to allow them to live peaceably, and Yah rewarded that with the correct direction. Because Abram could have literally looked out and said, "Okay, well, that spot looks good too," even after Lot chose it. He said, "You choose right, I'll choose left." So he could have literally looked to the left and said, "Well, that looks good to me," and he could have made that move and walked that way, and it would have been the completely wrong move. But Yah told him the correct direction, and that's what we aim for Yah to see us as worthy based on how we act, how we love our neighbor. First on how we love him, but in this case, how we love our neighbor. And he's gonna show us that love, no matter how our neighbor treats us. So it's a profound story.
You know what just came to mind while you were saying that? There are gonna be moments when you do have to separate from family members. And it doesn't mean that you hate them or that you're gonna despise them or do it in a hateful, despiteful way, but in a loving way, you will depart from them because what Yahuwah has for you, doesn't include them in the idea. So I see that happening also here where Abraham is a chosen one, and he's the one that Yahuwah is gonna start doing things with, and perhaps this separation happened because he needed to grow more, and clearly here it said that the land couldn't hold them both. It wasn't for the both of them. So in order for Abraham's expansion to happen or for his growth to happen, he had to depart from Lot. So sometimes with our own family members, for our own growth, for our own expansion, we find ourselves having to depart from them in order to allow Yahuwah to work on us or to do what it is he needs to do with us.
Right. And I mean, that even goes deeper. I mean, the story could continue because when you really even think about that, so Abram told Lot, "Pick you a land," right? And what did Lot do? He looked for what was the best looking land. He didn't seek Yah. He didn't seek Yah at all. He went by sight. And the thing is, we know Lot to be a righteous man because first of all, he's up under Abraham. Now, when Lot gets saved from the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, we know that, Lot was a righteous man, but also too, Abram asked Yah to do that. Once we're being righteous, our loved ones, even if we have to isolate from them, right? Because they're not going where we're going, but our loved ones could be saved by our righteousness. We ask Yah to protect them, and Yah, I mean, he does it all throughout scriptures, right? The whole line of David, was done on account of David's righteousness.
Mm-hmm.
So we got to look at how righteous are we and see that, even though we're doing this for Yah and we're doing this because we want to show ourselves approved to Yah, we're also showing love to our brethren when we're praying prayers to help protect them, and we're being righteous. And it's going to help them become more righteous. And then the cycle will continue. So yeah, just because it's isolating, Lot wasn't as far as we know, Lot wasn't a bad guy, but it's just the fact that he didn't think to look to Yah at that moment. And the reason why he couldn't share that with Abram is because Abram's first thought would be to look to Yah. Lot might have been like, yo, that's crazy. Why would you want to go over to that land when clearly you see the grass is luscious over here, but that land's got nothing but sand? But Abram's like, well, Yah told us to do that. And now Lot's got doubt in his mind. So Yah needed Abram separate from that, but at the same time, he was still able to use Abram to help save Lot. It's beautiful, man.
And yes, it does prove that in the word that, Lot was under Abraham's covering and many other people, because you see in the word that, for love of Abraham, I do this. For love of Abraham, I do that.
Right.
The same thing happened for the line of David. For love of David, I do this. I think he said that to Solomon, and we all know, where Solomon was heading towards. But Yahuwah said, for the love of David, I'm gonna bless you. So those that are, doing well with Yahuwah and are under the covering of Yahuwah, that covering does extend to those that we love, because Yahuwah loves those that we love.
Halelu'Yah. Halelu'Yah. So anybody out there that's trying to convince these family members and they're really not trying to hear it, let that bolster your spirit. Just seek Yah even harder on behalf of them. And how much greater would be the glory of Yah over your own life. Halelu'Yah.
Halelu'Yah. All right. So now you talking about Lot being saved and all, we're actually gonna go into that chapter where it talks about that.
Okay, Genesis chapter 14.
All right.
And it came to pass in the days of Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Elasar, Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of nations, that these made war with Bera, king of Sodom, and with Bersha, king of Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Admah, and Shemeber, king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, which is Zoar. All these were joined together in the vale of Sodom, which is the salt sea. 12 years they served Chedorlaomer, and in the 13th year they rebelled. And in the 14th year came Chedorlaomer and the kings that were with him, and smote the Rephaims in Ashtaroth, Karnaim, and the Zuzims in Ham, and the Emims in Shaveh Kiriathaim, and the Horites in their Mount Seir unto Elparan, which is by the wilderness. And they returned and came to En-Mishpat, which is Kadesh, and smote all the country of the Amalekites, and also the Amorites that dwelt in Hazazon Tamar. And there went out the king of Sodom, and the king of Gomorrah, and the king of Admah, and the king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, the same is Zoar, and they joined battle with them in the vale of Sidon, with Chedorlaomer the king of Elam, and with Tidal king of nations, and Amraphel king of Shinar, and Arioch king of Elasar, 4 kings with 5. And the vale of Sidon was full of slime pits, and the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, and fell there, and they that remained fled to the mountain. And they took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah, and all their victuals, and went their way. And they took Lot, Abram's brother's son, who dwelt in Sodom, and his goods, and departed. And there came one that had escaped, and told Abram the Hebrew, for he dwelt in the plain of Mamre the Amorite, brother of Eshcol, and brother of Aner, and these were confederate with Abram. And when Abram heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed his trained servants, born in his own house, 318, and pursued them unto Dan. And he divided himself against them, he and his servants, by night, and smote them, and pursued them unto Hobah, which is on the left hand of Damascus. And he brought back all the goods, and also brought again his brother Lot and his goods, and the women also, and the people. And the king of Sodom went out to meet him after his return from the slaughter of Chedorlaomer and of the kings that were with him at the valley of Shaveh, which is the king's day. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine, and he was priest of the Most High God. And he blessed him, and said, Blessed be Abram of the Most High God, possessor of heaven and earth. And blessed be the Most High God, which hath delivered thine enemies into thy hand. And he gave him tithes of all. And the king of Sodom said unto Abram, Give me the persons, and take the goods to thyself. And Abram said to the king of Sodom, I have lifted up mine hand unto the Lord, the Most High God, the possessor of heaven and earth, that I will not take a thread even to a shoe latchet, and that I will not take anything that is thine, lest thou shouldst say, I have made Abram rich. Save only that which the young men have eaten, and the portion of the men which went with me, Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre. Let them take their portion. Halelu'Yah.
Halelu'Yah. All right. So I want to paint the picture of what's happening towards the beginning and middle here. And if you notice, it says these kings versus these kings, but we need to follow lineage here. And this lineage, we could find it from the previous chapters. So you have King Amraphel. Am I saying that right? Amraphel? King
Amraphel. Mm-hmm.
So you have King Amraphel. It says he's the king of Shinar, right? Shinar, right. We know that is part of Babylon.
That's okay? Babylon. Yeah, that's the name for Babylon before.
It's a city. It's a city in Babylon. And then you have Arioch of Elisar, right? And they resided in Mesopotamia. This is also an area around Babylon. And then you have King Chedorlaomer, but it says that he's from the city of Elam. Elam was the first son of Shem. Okay? Yet he is the one leading these people, because later on in the chapter we see that they were following him, or he was the leader. Let me see what verse says it. So in the verse, just give me a second so I could clarify this. So here in Genesis 14:5, it says, and in the 14th year came Chedorlaomer, and the kings that were with him. All right, so, the 12 years they served Chedorlaomer, 14:4. 12 years they served Chedorlaomer. So that means that Chedorlaomer was the head of this group. And it's interesting because this says that he's from Elam. He's an Elamite. That's Shem's firstborn, Elam. And then the last person mentioned in that list was titled King of Nations. And when you see the word nations, it's a reference to the Japhites, the nations. And this group was versus another 5 kingdoms. So you see that this is Babylon versus the Canaanites, because the other 5 kingdoms are Canaanite territory. So basically it's a war of the worlds, of people who are not on Yahuwah's side at all. You get me? Right. You have the Babylons. Right. You have all the children of Noah's children. You have Shem, Ham, and Japhites, together here under Babylon rule, and they're versus the Canaanites. And this is kind of showing how that curse of Canaan is kind of showing here, where even the people of the world, or the people who are not even of Yahuwah, are against them. All right. And they're in a war with them. And as a matter of fact, they win that war. Those four kingdoms actually, they actually, you know, win the war with the Canaanites, where they even take they take Lot as you know, as a prisoner of war, basically. But you see how the Canaanites loses war to the Babylonians, so that's kind of a reference there to the curse of Canaan.
Right. And it's also proof of when Yah said that man's heart was being evil continually. I mean, he always talks about how they were always fighting. I mean, we never really see it in the beginning before the flood, but even after the flood, we see that the way of the world kind of remanifested itself in the hearts of men. And, you know, starting with Nimrod and the Tower of Babel, all the way up till now, you've got nations fighting against nations. And that's something that we see all the time. I actually wanted to touch on Melchizedek, and I'm sure you did too, but
Yeah.
I was definitely moved to speak on this because we know that Yahusha, the new covenant, was under the order of the priesthood of Melchizedek.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, this is proof of Yahusha being the Messiah. Even David writes about it. And I've got a couple of precepts. So Psalms 110, right, talks about Melchizedek. And in verse 4, right, it says, the Lord hath sworn and will not repent. Thou art a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. And it's, of course, he's talking about Yahusha. This was years before Yahusha was even thought of, right? But then when you even go into Hebrews, I believe it was chapter 7. 1 second. Let me see if I can find it. Chapter 7. Yeah, verses 1 through like 27. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but he even talks about Melchizedek and, you know, how he's the king of Salem. He was the high priest. We saw in that verse that he was the high priest of the Most High. And you look at Abram and his righteousness, back to his humility, how he even gave tithes.
Mm-hmm.
Though Melchizedek was basically praising Abram, Abram still gave tithes to Melchizedek. So we're looking at that foreshadowing of the coming Messiah and really the new covenant before the old covenant's even established.
Halelu'Yah.
You know, there was always that gateway, because we know that the Levitical priesthood was an imperfect covenant. You know, we always had, and it wasn't imperfect because of Yah, it was imperfect because of man, and our sacrifices weren't enough to atone for all of the things that we've done to turn our backs against Yah. So he gave us the order of Melchizedek by way of Yahusha to return back to that perfect priesthood.
Yeah, it's the Levitical priesthood, imperfect in the sense that it was a temporary priesthood. It was, the sins were never removed of anyone, because every year, you know, they had to make a sacrifice, or they had to make a sacrifice every time they broke the law. So the Levitical priesthood and those sacrifices never removed sin, and only covered it.
Right.
So now under the order of Melchizedek, it's not that our sins are covered. Our sins are completely removed. So it's not something temporary. It's something that's actually permanent. And it's interesting because Melchizedek, actually, it means king of righteousness. And it says that he's the king of Salem. Salem is Shalom.
Jerusalem, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it means Shalom, it means peace. He's the king of peace. And then it talks about the bread and the wine as well, you know. So it makes all these connections to Yahusha.
Halelu'Yah.
Halelu'Yah.
I also saw too, you know, just speaking on the character of Abraham. I mean, I always say that, you know, Genesis is character development. We're really seeing how some of these major players that we've known for our whole lives, we're seeing their character. You know, Abram, he went and he got Lot, and I guess as a byproduct, ended up helping out the king of Sodom for real. Though that wasn't his original plan, you know, he ended up helping out the king of Sodom by taking out Chedorlaomer. So, of course, the king of Sodom is like, well, hey, here and have some of these spoils. And Abram, in his righteousness, he said, that he's not going to allow the king of Sodom to attach himself to this victory. He wasn't going to allow him to think that, oh, well, you made me rich. And that was the right move to make, because most people, I mean, I'm not doing stuff for free. Yeah, he saved his brother's son. But at the end of the day, you know, that's getting extra prizes on top of, that's something that we look at as a good thing. You know, and a lot of people tie that to the Most High. They say, oh, yeah, God bless me with this, God bless me with that. Not realizing that whoever it was that blessed you with that, you know, it could have just been them blessing you with that. And Yah had nothing to do with it. You know, it's a very fine line. So when you're looking at the way that Abram reacts to the king approaching him about getting some of these spoils, but here's the thing too. Abram, in his love, he didn't just say, oh, well, these are my people, nobody's going to get anything. He said, no, give them their spoils. You know, they came and helped me out. I've always heard my whole life that Abram was like the ultimate host. You know, he was a really good host, and he's always been able to look after his own. And he allowed his people to get spoils. He allowed his people to really grow in that value, while he stayed humble and he stayed knowing that this was Yah that sent me out on this mission, and Yah that watched me through this entire thing. And I mean, I see more and more, honestly, like I've read about Abraham my whole life. And now that I'm actually diving a little deeper, I can see where the value is that we really ought to really, like I said before, take a page out of his book and really apply that to our own lives.
Halelu'Yah. Halelu'Yah, definitely. And check this out. If you read Genesis 14:14, it says, and when Abraham heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed his trained servants, born in his own house, 318, and pursued them unto Dan. I want to dissect that a bit. He armed his trained servants. Abraham had an army. And he had them trained. Abraham was a general. He was a martial artist. If you know, right. He trained them. So Abraham is not just this humble guy. You know, yes, he's humble by heart. Right. You get me? But he has an army of 318 people that he armed and that they were trained. Meaning, he didn't say that he was training them to go and defeat these people and take Lot. They were already trained. What he did do was arm them, but they were already trained. You know? So Abraham is this general, and he's a tactical general, because he said then that he pursued them into Dan, and that's another thing I want to touch on, and then he divided himself against them, and he and his servants by night smote them. So this guy had a plan. He knew how he was gonna attack. It wasn't just, oh yeah, you know, help me defeat them. No, bro, like, we got this. We got this. We're gonna make this happen. Although, definitely Yahuwah helped them, because look at this. This was an army of 4 kings.
4 kingdoms.
Yeah.
4 kingdoms. Like, think of the movie 300. Like, literally.
So you had an army of 300 men that defeated an army of 4 kingdoms.
That's so crazy.
Abraham wasn't just anybody. All right.
Right. He knew who to attack, when to attack. Yep.
So, and then of course, Yahuwah helped them, because, man, it was just 300 of them, you know.
Right.
Definitely there was divine intervention. I mean, even Melchizedek says that, what was it? The words that he chose to tell them?
Blessed be Abraham of the Most High God, possessor of heaven and earth, and blessed be the Most High God, which hath delivered thy enemies into thy hand.
Exactly.
Hallelujah.
So definitely Yahuwah was in the midst of this. Okay, that was their stronghold. That was their shield here. But definitely Abraham was ready. He was definitely ready, because they were trained. And then check this out. Says that he pursued them into Dan. Now, who is Dan? Dan is one of the children of Jacob, of Israel. So how could this land be called Dan? Right?
Right.
So I looked into this, and I have a precept for this. When this land was being called Dan, or when it was given to Dan, it says in Judges 18:29, it says, and they called the name of the city Dan, after the name of Dan their father, who was born unto Israel. Howbeit, the name of the city was Laish at the first. So that means that when they wrote this, they wrote this so the audience of the time, because who wrote this was Moses, and at that time that land was already called Dan. So this was written for those people at that time to understand exactly where the geography was. But as we read in Judges, during the time of Abraham, it wasn't called Dan, it was called Laish. So the definition to the word Laish is lion. So he pursued them unto the lion.
Wow.
Right?
Wow, that's crazy.
And not only that, if we want to also observe the word Dan, the definition of the word Dan is judgment.
Pursued them unto their judgment.
Pursued them into the lion, who is the judge. You get me? So basically, he attacked them and put them into the lion's den. He put them into judgment. So
that's crazy.
Definitely Yahuwah was involved in this.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And honestly, I mean, when you were talking about him being a tactical military presence, I mean, I just couldn't help but think about that movie 300, man. I really feel like they probably stole that whole ordeal from this story. I don't know of a time where Sparta, I mean, that might have been what happened in history, where there were 300 of them that went off and defeated all of was it Persia? But I mean, we see the story right here. He gathered 318 men to fight 4 kingdoms of militaries. And I mean, he had to be tactical. I mean, the Most High had to have been with him the whole way. Yah was with him, telling him, hey, I need you to go to this land, go to this land, go to that land, stay there for a while, separate from Lot, now go to this land. So of course, during that time, I mean, Yah's probably like spitfiring directions the whole time. Wait till nightfall. They're not going to be able to see you coming. Separate your guys. Take them this way. They'll get them that way. Like, and he's got Yah in him the whole time, giving him a battle plan. And it's like, we can get to that point where we're not out here fighting wars, but at the same time, we're living life. And to us, that in itself is a war. And Yah can tell us, literally spoon feed us every direction. But the thing is, he trusted Abram to listen. He can't trust us to listen the way Abram listened. And he might be telling us directions, but we might not even identify it as a direction because of our lack of obedience. And that's what we have to get clear from our souls, our spirits, you know? It's great hearing the story of Abram again for another time, yet another time in my life, and really being opened up to exactly what Yah is really trying to tell us here. So honestly, the book of Genesis is powerful. I mean, a lot of people say that, you know, the stuff, it doesn't relate anymore because those are ancient times, but I mean, it's the most relevant thing we have.
Halelu'Yah. And what this also teaches us is that if you're already ready, you don't gotta get ready. Definitely, Abraham was ready.
He was 100% ready.
He was already ready. So, I do want to, you know, emphasize on Melchizedek, you know, because there is these foreshadows. First of all, Melchizedek being the king of righteousness, says he's the king of Salem, he's a king of peace. You know, he brings forth bread and wine. You know, this is definitely foreshadows. And he was the priest of the Most High God. he was the priest of Yahuwah. So
Hallelujah.
this is definitely foreshadows a Yahusha, which he is the king of righteousness, the one of peace, which he broke bread and gave wine, and he is not a priest from a Levitical priesthood, but he is a priest of the Most High. This is very interesting how, first of all, Melchizedek, there is no lineage here that points out to Melchizedek. He just comes out of nowhere. So
Right.
this guy is just this mysterious guy that has no connection to Shem, Japheth, or Ham at all. This is somebody who definitely seems like a divine figure who really shows that is a foreshadow of Messiah. It's a messianic foreshadow, someone who has nothing to do with any human line whatsoever at all. And you see that Abraham being someone who has a very, very close connection to Yahuwah, he has a very close connection, yet Abraham gives tithes to him. Abraham sees this person as someone to respect. He gave him tithe of everything. And in contrast, you see that with Sodom, he's like, man, I don't want you to give me anything. I don't want anyone to think that me and you have anything together. So you can see the difference on how he treats Melchizedek and how he treats Sodom. So Melchizedek is definitely someone that it's in that line of respect that should be respected, someone divine, someone who's sent from Yahuwah.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. So if you don't have anything else, I'm pretty much good to move on to the next chapter.
Yes.
Genesis 15. After these things, the word of the Lord came unto Abram in a vision, saying, Fear not, Abram, I am thy shield, and thy exceeding great reward. And Abram said, Lord God, what wilt thou give me, seeing I go childless, and the steward of my house is this Eleazar of Damascus? And Abram said, Behold to me, thou hast given no seed, and lo, one born in my house is mine heir. And behold, the word of the Lord came unto him, saying, This shall not be thine heir, but he that shall come forth out of thine own bowels shall be thine heir. And he brought him forth abroad, and said, Look now toward heaven, and tell the stars, if thou be able to number them. And he said unto him, So shall thy seed be. And he believed in the Lord, and he counted it to him for righteousness. And he said unto him, I am the Lord that brought thee out of Ur of the Chaldees, to give thee this land to inherit it. And he said, Lord God, whereby shall I know that I shall inherit it? And he said unto him, Take me an heifer of 3 years old, and a she-goat of 3 years old, and a ram of 3 years old, and a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. And he took unto him all these, and divided them in the midst, and laid each piece one against the other. But the birds divided he not. And when the fowls came down upon the carcasses, Abram drove them away. And when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram. And lo, an horror of great darkness fell upon him. And he said unto Abram, Know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge, and afterwards shall they come out with great substance. And thou shalt go to thy fathers in peace, and thou shalt be buried in a good old age. But in the 4th generation they shall come hither again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. And it came to pass that when the sun went down and it was dark, behold, a smoking furnace and a burning lamp that passed between those pieces. In the same day the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, Unto thy seed have I given this land, from the river of Egypt unto the great river, the river Euphrates, the Kenites, and the Kenizzites, and the Cadmonites, and the Hittites, and the Perizzites, and the Rephaims, and the Amorites, and the Canaanites, and the Girgashites, and the Jebusites. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. All right. So first and foremost, the first verse of this chapter. The first verse, like when I read this, I was like, wow. After these things,
Oh yeah.
the word of Yahuwah came unto Abram in a vision, saying, "Fear not, Abram, I am thy shield and thy exceeding great reward." The word. Abram had a conversation with Yahusha. So surely, when Yahusha told the Pharisees, before Abram was I am, he basically was telling them, bro, I had a conversation with
Right.
Abram. Me and him was boys. We was talking.
Right.
You know, this
Right.
is crazy because, you know, Abram was talking to the word. Had a conversation with him and all. You know, this is beautiful to read this.
Right. Halelu'Yah.
Halelu'Yah.
So I wanted to point out the prophecy that's given.
Yes.
The enslavement for 400 years, right?
Yes.
So a lot of people, you know, they kind of pin that to that first Exodus, right? When we were in Egypt, and you know, it was like 420 years we were in Egypt or something like that.
430, I believe.
But
Well, there's some
yeah,
parts that say 400, and then there's some parts in the word that says 430.
right. And when you look at the first Exodus and the second Exodus and how synonymous they truly are, right? When you really look at the fact that, yeah, our ancient fathers were in the land of actual physical Egypt. When you look at that first Exodus, okay, so our ancestors, they were in physical, literal Egypt. And then you take it all the way to the transatlantic slave trade. And you look at the fact that our ancestors that came over here in ships to a land unknown, to a land where they knew not the language, to serve them, worship their gods of wood and stone, right? And you look at all of what this country was built upon, the Greek philosophy, the Roman architecture, all of that being stolen from the Egyptian lands by the Greeks. We're living in Egypt, quite literally. When you see it that way, we're not in the land of Egypt, but we literally live in Egypt. And Yah says never to pursue. Right. He says never to pursue Egypt ever again. So it's a literal synonymous Exodus, right? We were taken as slaves in Egypt, and again as slaves to America and all around the world, but really mainly America, Babylon, Mystery Babylon, as Egypt, waiting for our second Exodus out of Egypt, out of that bondage, right? And it's just so profound to me how Yah can give Abram that one prophecy and it applies to two totally different generations of people.
And
I mean,
actually, those 400 years of being in Egypt that the Israelites went through, right? If you look at what happened in the transatlantic slave, from the beginning of that till the civil rights movement, that was also 400 years. If you think about it.
Right. Yeah, right around then. I mean, shoot, I know. So I think, what was it, like 1492? Or no, that was when we discovered.
Columbus.
That's like, yeah, that's 1619. 1619. So they were saying that 2019, right? That was Christopher Columbus. 1619. So they were saying that 2019. I remember when 2019 came around and a lot of people were talking about this, right? And right around 2019, that's when a lot of people started to wake up. When you really, like, truthfully think about it, right around that time is when people started really thinking about stuff. And a year later, about 2 years later is when I found the truth. You know what I mean? So, I mean, 1619 to 2019, that was that 400-year period. We were still in bondage, still living in the world. Yeah, still living in the world, still living under the government authority. Now more than ever, you see people that are refuting voting, refuting the ways of the world, that are talking out against some of these agendas that completely just have nothing to do with the word, and getting called hate mongers for it. I mean, I honestly, I've seen conspiracy theories before, but never to an extent related to the word that I do now. You know, and that, I mean, there's definitely something there. And obviously, you know, we don't really know the true times. You know, we're going based on a calendar that was made by Babylonian systems. So as close of, you know, 1419 or 1619 to 2019, I mean, that's as close as that is, you know, because that's 400 years. I mean, maybe a year or 2, 3 years later, that could have been really the 400-year mark. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And here we are in 2025. And I actually looked up. So I found out in research that while Egypt doesn't literally mean bondage, it became synonymous with bondage in a biblical sense. But interestingly enough, when you look at what Mitzrayim breaks down to, you know, it in a paleo sense, you've got Mem, which means water, chaos. Sade, I'm not really sure how to pronounce that. I think it's Zade, Tzade. Sade or Sade.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's like a hook.
I don't think it's Sade.
It's probably Sade.
Sade somebody else.
I think that's Sade, actually.
Okay. All right. Okay.
But it's like a it's like a hook. But check this out though. So it means righteousness, it means a trail, desire, but then it also means to snare and to trap. Resh is head, you know, the leader. Yod is an arm, which denotes working and action. And Mem, again, that's water and chaos. And the root Mitzer, you know, from Mitzrayim, means a narrow place, constriction and oppression. But then the Ayim denotes a dual form. So I remember you asked me one time, why would his name be Mitzrayim if he was one person? It's because of the dual Egypts, the upper and the lower Egypts.
Exactly, yeah.
And then you even look at the land we call America. We have an upper and lower Egypt, North and South America. We're the only continent that has that, where there's two of its kind with the same name. I literally just thought about that.
Well,
that's crazy.
I
literally just thought about that.
But check it out. You saying that right now brings to mind that the United States itself is a Mitzrayim, because you got blue
the
and
North
red.
and the South. Right.
No, you got Republican and Democrat. You get me?
Right. Yeah.
You got dual systems. And you know what? Check this out. That it's also a representation of Babylon in the sense of this, because the word Shinar means, and I wrote this down in the notes, and this, wow, Yahweh really works in beautiful ways, because I didn't say this before, because it has to do with what we're speaking now. So Shinar means to repeat evil, or the land of double rebellion. Okay? And in Shinar, that's where Babel was constructed, right? So, and then Babel, we remember that in Paleo is Bet Lamed, which means two houses under one leader. So America, the United States of America, is definitely Babylon. Prophetically, it is Shinar, because it's double rebellion, it's two houses under one leadership, when we look into that definition right there.
Absolutely. You can even take it back to the Civil War, and it was even more apparent then. You had the Southern fighting for slavery, and the Confederates, the Union and the Confederates. Exactly. Yep. Exactly. Everything about this place. And then when you look at the name Egypt in itself, and the fact that it means that duality, you know, that right there in itself should show us that we're not. So what I wrote here, right? Even when you look at the second Exodus, the coming out of Mystery Babylon, look at all the American values, architecture, politics, and the lifestyle in general. They were adopted by the Roman way, who stole it from the Greeks, who learned it from the Egyptians. So while the more outward influence of this country is certainly Greco-Roman, we still have the Egyptians to thank for that train of thought. Even looking at certain structures like the Washington Monument being an obelisk, it's an Egyptian-made structure. The back of the dollar bill holds the pyramid carrying the Eye of Horus, an Egyptian deity. it has become very evident that we live in Egypt just as much as we are living in Rome, just as much as we are living in Greece, just as much as we are living in Babylon. And this is why we must come out of her. The ideas that were put in us from this country is very much pagan thought. And the reason why all of those combine so much together is because it's one enemy. It's one enemy giving all these different nations the same ideologies.
Hallelujah.
Robbing one country and putting it in his new land, his new ideology, then robbing that country and putting it in his new land. And now here we are in 2025, and it looks like multiple different nations of people, but they're all influenced by the same enemy, which is why they have the same ideal. Exactly.
So,
but it's still that duality. It's crazy, man.
So it's basically going back to Babylon in Nimrod's day, where it was this one world government type thing, this one world religion, and Nimrod was this God man that everyone, praised.
Right.
It's all leading back to that. And you know what? It's interesting. Why is it that all the names of the lands, correspond to the names of the children of Ham, Shem, and Japheth, but Egypt, they changed the name of Egypt even in the world. Why wasn't it continued as Misraim? Why was it changed to Egypt? Why? I'm pretty sure I'm not pretty sure, but I know for a fact in the Tanakh, in its Hebrew writing, it says Misraim. So why, when it was translated, it was later written as Egypt? So I wonder if there's like some type of cover up or something,
Gotta be.
Because Egypt, I believe it's Greek word, right? It should be. I think it's the way that the Greeks saw it, or the Romans called them, because their actual name was Misraim. Just like how the Greeks, that name Greek is not what they called themselves. They called themselves the Hellenes. It was the Romans that called the Hellenes Greeks. So,
Greeks really were from the tribe of Java. Javan. Yeah. So I mean, really, they were Javanites.
They were Javanites. So it's wild how these names make you get lost in the sauce if you don't really, trace back to what their actual lineage is from. So, and I believe that's the tactic. That's the tactic of the enemy. So we don't tie them in to their corresponding lineage. So it's just interesting to me why would the names change? Because Israel's Israel, and the Canaanites is from Canaan. Why was it that the Egyptians, didn't continue with the name of Misraim? So it's pretty much a tactic, going on in there.
And when you look back to when we discussed in an earlier episode about the names actually meaning something and creating sort of a message, I believe Mitzrayim and even Javan, those names literally meant what those countries are called at that time. So Javan was translated to mean Greece. And it's like I said, at the time when Javan was being named, Greece wasn't a thing. But in research, Javan literally means the word Greece. So when you put that into the message lineup, it's gonna make sense because you're talking about Greece. There's no actual from the research I've done. Now, if I'm wrong, again, please, people, if we're wrong about anything, feel free to comment. Feel free to help us to see. But from my understanding, the name Mitzrayim means double Egypts, and the name Javan literally means Greece. And there's no other terminology to explain those names the same way, Shem means name, or Ham means hot, Japheth means to spread, to expand. Those names didn't have that sort of a definition. They just literally meant the names of those countries. And it leads me to wonder, at the time when they were naming these children, like, did they just give them like just an arbitrary name at that point? Like, well, I don't know what the name, I'm just going to call him Misraim. I'm just going to call him Javan. Because they're not thinking, oh, we're writing out prophecy. They're just naming a kid. So it's just profound to me that those names would mean that.
I'm gonna name my son Oppression.
Exactly. Like, right, exactly. But that's not far. That's not far off though, because we look at what Rachel named Benjamin at first, son of my sorrow,
Yeah.
right? But then Israel had to change his name to Benjamin
So
because he didn't want that. Right, right. Yeah, she's just dying. That's all. So dramatic.
dramatic. Bro, but you said that you wonder why Mizraim meant bondage, but when you were explaining the paleo, it does mean oppression.
Right. No, so it does point to that whenever you look at the actual characters, but in the research that I've done prior to, it said that Egypt doesn't literally mean the word bondage, but it is synonymous with bondage in a biblical sense. But then that's when I went into the letters of actual Mitzrayim, and then that's when I saw, yeah. So I mean, a lot of people say it means oppression now, which I mean that's not inaccurate, but to say that you could look in a dictionary and see Egypt meaning actually bondage, I don't think you would see that.
No, I don't think you're gonna see that, because ain't no way that the world is gonna give the prophetic meanings to words. So definitely that's why you have to study, because America is not going to be in the dictionary as Mystery Babylon. Of course not.
Right, of course not. Right.
You have to have a discerning spirit. You have to see at the prophecies. You need to see what the prophetical meanings of the things. And not only that, it's in plain paleo. You see it in the actual pictographs what these things mean. The world is not going to give you its modern definition to align with that, for sure. No. So
right, absolutely.
Yeah, you look up in a dictionary, United States Mystery Babylon. No, it's not good.
Oh my gracious. Could you imagine though what the people would say?
Donald Trump, the Antichrist. No.
Oh God. Oh man. They're gonna flag this video because you said that.
This is only for educational purposes, and we were making a joke. So, yeah. Definitely, it's not gonna give you. These are things that you see it in a spiritual sense, in a prophetic sense, and you had to go look into the paleo meaning in order to find the deeper meaning of these words. But yeah, you're not gonna find this in a dictionary for sure.
Right, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Halelu'Yah.
So I also wanted to touch base on what was being said here, because well, first of all, before mentioning this 400-year period, you see Abraham getting these animals and cutting them up in pieces, and it says that he puts them on the sides of each other. So, and then it says that this burning fire and this lamp walks in between them. So there's this imagery basically of these animals that he sacrificed or that he cut up, the carcasses. They basically are to the side, and there's like a path. And here it says that Abraham went to a deep sleep, right, on sundown, and then a horror of great darkness fell upon him. So when Yahuwah basically, presents himself in his sleep, and he's giving him this message of the 400 years in his sleep, and he felt this sense of darkness, this sense of horror. It was like a heavy feeling that he felt when he was receiving this message. And it says after that, and it came to pass that when the sun went down, it was dark, behold, a smoking furnace and a burning lamp that passed between those pieces. So when it talks about those pieces, it's referring to the carcasses that were broken into pieces. So I looked into this, and this was something that was done as when someone was doing a covenant with someone, and they did this ritual. And basically, in this ritual, you see that a smoking furnace and a burning lamp was passing through this. And from what I see in this, or what I see in this, is that it's the spirit of Yahuwah, walking through this offering that Abraham made, and he's passing through it as a smoking furnace and as a burning lamp. Now, I feel that smoking furnace is like that fire that of judgment, because he is that fire. But then also that burning lamp, he's that guide. So,
Right.
and then it says right after that, in that same day, Yahuwah made a covenant with him. So as he was passing through the sacrifice, a covenant was being made with Abram. So there's gonna be this judgment, yet this guide that's gonna happen. So while there's gonna be this 400 years of enslavement, that is a judgment that Yahuwah is placing upon them, but at the same time, a burning lamp. It's a guide. So while it is judgment, it is something that needs to be done. It's how they say that even the bad works for good. There's something it had to happen. There's something that had to happen. Yes, it was a judgment on Israel these 400 years, yet it was something that was gonna guide them into something else. That's what I see from this, because to me it was weird to read that, and I read it multiple times, and as I read it, it painted that picture to me, because I was like, why did he feel this horror, and why were these carcasses put to the side, and why was a smoking furnace and a lamp passing through this? So that's what I felt from that, or that's what I see from that. If anybody could tell us something deeper about this, or maybe I'm missing something, but from what my spirit tells me, or what I saw from that, it was this covenant that was being done, but this covenant had like this duality with it, where judgment was being placed upon the seed that he was talking about, yet it was this guide as well that was being placed upon this seed.
Well, that actually speaks to a precept, your whole thought behind it, because actually I read it, and I mean, I knew it was something deeper there, but I couldn't really put a finger on it. But hearing you say that, it makes a lot of sense.
Wow,
because when you think about it, look at the prophecy that he wrote to Israel through, when he was talking to Moses, and they were out in the wilderness and everything, and he was telling Moses, he was saying that they would deny him, they would commit fornication with these other deities, and that he would turn away from them, and that later on in a land unknown, they're going to serve these people, worship gods of wood and stone, but then in that land, that they were going to seek him, that they were going to find him, and that they were going to come out of that. You know what I mean? And that's our generation today. So that judgment is that smoking judgment. Yeah, we're going through that slavery, that and capture and all that stuff. But then in the midst of that comes the burning lamp, because now we're able to find him as a result of being 400 years a slave. Yeah, so I mean, it's definitely prophetic. Yes, Halelu'Yah.
Wow,
Halelu'Yah, really.
Thank you for clarifying that, because that's what I saw, but I still didn't understand, but definitely that's what I was seeing from there. But what you're saying right now, wow, that just makes it a little more clear for me. That while we're going through judgment, Yahuwah will still use that as a guide for those who are willing to be guided within that judgment. Wow.
And he even specifically says it in his prophecy that we will come out of that bondage, or we will come out of worshiping gods of wood and stone, and we will seek him with our whole face, or seek his face with our whole hearts. So that right there, I think really that's probably spot on of what he was trying to do there, bro. Honestly, I mean, Halelu'Yah, really.
Halelu'Yah. And so check this out. It says towards the end that he was going to give the seed, the land from the river of Egypt onto the river Euphrates. And then it names these people, says the Kenites and the Kenizzites and the Cadmonites and the Hittites and the Perizzites, and the Rephaims, and the Amorites, and the Canaanites, and the Girgashites, and the Jebusites. Now, if you look up the lineage of all these ites, and they are basically all stemming from Canaanites. They really are. They all stem from the Canaanites. So it's and it does mention the Canaanites, but the rest are children of the Canaanites. They're other tribes that came from the Canaanites. And this is actually a prophetic fulfillment of the Canaan's curse. This is a prophetic fulfillment because a lot of people, man, there's a lot of theories about Canaan's curse. There's people, man, I've even heard that that Canaan's curse is black skin. I've heard that before.
Oh yeah, I've heard that too. That's crazy. I've definitely heard that. That's
heard
That's stupid. That is so dumb.
Because Ham saw the nakedness of his father, you know, Canaan was cursed, and then that's where black people come from. All right, that is not Canaan's curse. Here we see the prophetic fulfillment of Canaan's curse. What Canaan's curse is loss of inheritance, because their land is being taken away. All their tribes are gonna be pushed out of their lands, and they're gonna fall, you know, under Israelites. They're gonna be displaced and made subject to the line of Shem, basically. So Canaan's curse is not black skin. It's not black skin, and it's not slavery, because even people think that Canaan's cursed because, you know, how Canaan is the child of Ham, and Ham are the Africans, and you know that the transatlantic slave stuff was basically the Canaan's curse. A lot of people say that too, because they tied blacks, you know, to Ham. You get me?
Right.
So they say that slavery is Canaan's curse, and that's not that. That's not that. That's just, bro. It's people just make up stuff, and it's not even biblical. But the word itself here is letting us know what Canaan's curse is. Canaan is gonna lose its land. Their curse is loss of inheritance.
Halelu'Yah. And as you were reading verse 18, I had forgotten to do this before, but you reminded me when you read it. In the same day, the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, unto thy seed have I given this land, from the river of Egypt unto the great river, the river Euphrates, right? So we can read that and we can visualize, okay, from the river of Egypt all the way to the river of Euphrates, that's where that land is. But if you look at that from a metaphorical sense, a spiritual sense, we already know that Egypt is synonymous with bondage. So we're starting from the river of bondage. And looking up what Euphrates is in Hebrew, the Paleo breakdown, it's Perat. That's Peh, Resh, and Tav. Peh meaning mouth, speak, open. Resh meaning the head, the leader in the beginning. And Tav meaning mark, covenant, and sign. So Perat literally means in Hebrew an opening from the leader marked by covenant. We're from the river of bondage going to the river of the opening of this new land of the leader marked by our covenant. Hallelujah.
So from bondage or oppression to covenant.
To covenant. Hallelujah. It's not even just a literal geographical river. It's literally painting the picture of where we're going from this bondage that we're currently in to the covenant that he's opening all of us up to these days, these last days.
Wow.
Man.
And if you look at the descriptive detail, the river, that means flow. So from flowing of bondage onto flowing covenant.
Right. So, the great covenant, the great river. Unto the great river. Right.
Yeah, and there's
The covenant.
an emphasis, yes, because it says the great
Mm-hmm.
river. It doesn't just say the river Euphrates, the great river. Yeah, wow.
Halelu'Yah.
Halelu'Yah. Wow. That's beautiful. That's what's up.
Yeah. So I mean I think that's a pretty good place to
That's
end
good
it, man.
stuff. Good stuff. Hey
Yeah,
guys,
hallelujah.
if you have anything that you would like to add, anything that we missed, anything that you can show us as well, or anything that you would like for us to go deeper in, just let us know. Remember to like, share, subscribe, share with others. Let others know that there's this community growing where we're sharing the word and we're all learning together, and we're just letting the Ruach flow and teach us as we go. So definitely hit that like button. Write down
Hit it.
write down on the comment section below, and just join us on this beautiful journey that we're taking on, learning more about the word and things that we might have missed before, that the Ruach is showing us right now. Halelu'Yah.
Hallelujah. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.